All right. Good evening, everyone. It's September 23rd, Council's regular meeting, second of the month. First order of business tonight is a moment of reflection, and after that, we'll get into the approval of the agendas. So we'll start with a moment of reflection now. Approval of the agendas, we have two. We have first up a consent agenda. Anyone wishing to pull from the consent agenda, otherwise to approve as presented? Councillor Wolstenholme, as presented. Okay, if there's no further discussion or questions, we'll call it the question. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion is carried. Moving on to our regular meeting agenda, we have a somewhat full agenda. We've been requested to add one legal and one land item. They are in our package already, they're just not on the public package. So those are two that will be added to in camera. Anyone prepared to make a motion to approve the agenda with the two additions? Councillor Fox makes that motion. We'll call it the question. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion is carried. We will move on then to for the good of council. Does anyone have something they wish to share for the good of council? I would like to mention that this coming week, I think there are 4 members of council that will be attending, or is it 5 members of council that will be attending the Alberta Municipalities Convention in Red Deer. So plenty of opportunities to take in some sessions, some training sessions. Councillor Patel is taking in training session tomorrow, and the rest there's a bit of a trade show and lots to see, so we look forward to being able to attend that this week. Anyone else have something they wish to share? Councillor Poitras.
Well, this past week we had our first day of frost on the ground, so that means that hockey season is following shortly thereafter. We do have a men's recreational hockey league that's starting up in town. We've been running it the past few years here, so we're getting that going. If people are interested in signing up, they can find us on Facebook, Fort Macleod Rec Hockey League, or reach out to me. And so, looking forward to a great season.
Very good, thank you. Any other comments? Councillor Fox?
Since we're talking about ice sports, Fort Macleod Curling Club has open registration now as well. I'm not exactly sure when their season starts. The ice isn't in yet, but look forward to.
Any other comments for the good of council? Councillor Henniger?
This coming Thursday is Battle of the Businesses for the Chamber of Commerce group, so you can go out and cheer them along. And then we also, in a few weeks, have a fundraiser for the library and the Empress Theater, and that's for Oktoberfest. I believe that's October 19th on a Saturday. Starts around 5:30 at the community hall, so hopefully there's some sausage and beers and some money raised for those two organizing groups.
All right, any other comments? Okay, seeing none, we will move on to delegations for tonight, and we have one, and we'd like to welcome Denise Joel here tonight on behalf of the Empress Theater Society to present some of their thoughts and plans on the Empress Theater renovation. So look forward to hearing from you tonight. The floor is yours.
Thank you. So Anthony very kindly provided some information to keep me a little on track here. So our recommendation is that council approves the Empress Theater renovation budget of $240,000. The details are the Empress Theatre renovation project aims to restore and enhance the historic Empress Theatre building, a designated Alberta historic resource. The revitalized Empress Theatre will provide visitors with an improved experience through seating restoration, flooring update and changes to improve the viewing and accessibility throughout the theatre. The seats will be restored, repadded, reupholstered, and the floor will be raised. There are architect plans that you have access to, I understand, to improve the sight lines for an improved seating and viewing experience for patrons. The budgeted amount will be included in the 2025 capital budget, and work would commence in May of 2025 with hopeful completion in October. The purpose is to restore, maintain, and improve our historic theatre. The total estimated cost for the project is $444,230. Empress Theatre Society contributions will be $125,000. Available grants include the Community Facility Enhancement Program, which is up to $125,000. The Heritage Preservation Partnership Program, which is a matching grant, up to $100,000. And some fundraising efforts are underway, not just in October, but ETS. We have plans for many fundraising events to ensure that our portion is close to completed by the time we are ready to start with that renovation. So the projected budgeted amount in 2025 year in 2024 capital budget is $236,531. A proposed increase to the $240,000 that was originally. Sorry.
Yes, in last year's capital budget, the 236,531 was approved in principle for the 2025 year, and that's
Okay.
what it was at. We just rounded up the
Right.
for
Okay.
$3,000.
Thank you. Council strategic plan, this submission supports the arts and culture and history and heritage. Applicable legislation, the Empress Theatre is a provincially designated historically significant building. All changes and renovations must be first approved by Alberta Heritage. And there are attachments which include the project cost estimate, the architect flooring adjustment plans, or the assessment. So in short, what we're seeking is provisional approval. As I understand, your capital budget will not technically be approved until January. And for us to secure funding through grants, we've had to establish a start date. And so we've established that date as May of 2025. We're seeking your provisional approval that we go ahead with that date. We are confident that we will be successful in those grants. And as well, I think it also will help our fundraising efforts if people know that we have a date of start that has been approved. In addition to that, we then, of course, want to be able to tell our staff that we'll be closed for 6 months, hopefully only 6 months, as well as our patrons. So thank you for your consideration of this.
Thank you for the presentation. Does council have any further questions on the drawings, on the details, on the timing? CEO Burdette.
And just to kind of echo what Denise had shared, with the plans and with the actual work that goes forward, it might be subject to some small changes and things. This is kind of at getting the estimate, and these are up-to-date estimates. These are new as of this year, but there could be subject to some small changes. But like Denise said, getting this in the kind of getting an approval now as opposed to waiting for the capital budget to be completed would allow the Empress Theatre Society, in conjunction with administration and the town, to move this forward.
Councillor Monteith.
The cost estimates, is that from quotes that they've got, or is it just estimates and then the quoting system will either come in higher or lower?
The estimates included from Songer Architecture. They have reached out to, I know they had contacted with the other engineering firms, and we had previously some other work that was to be done that was actually with the contracting firm. But at this time, it's the resources that the engineering firm used for those estimates, which historically or recently have always come in high. So we're hopeful that we might be able to save a few bucks.
Yeah, I think this development is a little different because it's a reno and it's historic, so I think we probably have to be careful. With the budget being 444, I noticed that there's 3 other programs we can draw from, which total up to a possible 350, right? So does that mean the town's portion may be lessened if all those grants do come through?
Yeah, we would work with the Empress Theater Society, right? Like if we get adequate funding from the grants, yeah, the town's portion could potentially go lower. If there's any money left over, that could potentially go into the reserves, because this is almost all of the reserves that the Empress Theater Society has. And that was kind of one of the conditions that we said, hey, if we're going to talk about committing to this, we're going to expect a large contribution. So we don't have anything formal as far as like what will happen if we get more funding than required, but that's definitely something we should consider.
And I'm assuming there's always other grant opportunities as well that we could draw from too, correct?
Yeah, there is actually another grant that we're looking into as well, a federal cultural spaces grant as well.
Yeah, especially the age of the building and yeah, very good. Any other questions? Anything else you would like to add, Denise? No?
No, just thank you for your time,
Okay.
consideration.
Okay, well, we'll consider this under the next, not the next, but the next portion of our agenda, and then we will have a decision at that point. All right, thank you very much. All right, next up, we have a public hearing tonight. It's bylaw 1984. And as we normally do, we'll ask our planner, Gavin Scott, from our Regional Planning Commission to introduce this bylaw to us and make the necessary highlights, and after which we will open it up for a public hearing.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. To Mayor, Council, and citizens, this evening's public hearing is in regard to bylaw 1984. This property has a long history. For many decades, it was a seniors facility, and since then has been started and restarted for various other uses, including a computer program repair, some housing, and most recently a group home, which that permit has now expired. So the current status of this building is that it is unoccupied, or should be unoccupied. And as such, the landowners seek to move forward with a new proposal. And thus we have this evening consideration for an allowance of up to 3 suites in the existing building, which were determined to be needed for a development permit. This evening's recommendation is that council do open a public hearing, hear from the citizens, as well as I have a letter from the SIGBORs to be read in just after my statement, so that'll be their portion of this evening's comments. And I don't think I will intend on reading all of the documents submitted by the citizens. Some of them are quite lengthy, so I hope you have read them. The content therein has certainly some important points to be made. And those points may be reiterated by the public, but certainly there is a 5-minute limitation on this evening's presentations. The purpose of the bylaw is to redesignate lands legally described as Lot 6 and 7, Block 27, Plan 9812196, and a portion of Lot 16, Block 27, Plan 0012428. That portion is town-owned land. So on the image above you, The dark highlight is a part of what is deemed to be an extension of the park that sits behind this property. And it has for many, many years sat as designated as R, residential, even though it functionality-wise is a park. And so staff would like to clean that up as part of this procedure. Now, should this not go forward, staff will bring this back at a later point. So the recommendation for that portion is to move to public and institutional. The close of the public hearing this evening, we hope to have enough information to understand what the concerns are. But we would like to suspend second and third reading until the completion of a subdivision sale and consolidation of the parking lot sitting behind this property. This property has a need for that parking. It always has had the need, and that parking lot sits in the hands of the town. And so that process needs to be finished, and it needs to be finished not just for this proposal and whether this proposal goes forward. It is for the better future of this building that it does contain all of its necessary parking. And that would keep the front edge of this property looking like a residential property and not impose extra parking on the front. And again, it is not yet determined as to what the longevity of this building will be. This evening, they are requesting that it be considered for 3 suites. This evening's public hearing was advertised in place in the Gazette on September 4th and 11th, with public notice also being posted in the town office and on social media. Adjacent landowners were sent notice via Canada Post, and thus we have certainly some letters that were garnered from those letters and the advertisement. In your comments that were received by letter, you'll find that a response was received from C. Young, S. Wiggle, M. Genre, and H&T Van Slyes. That does conclude my portion of this. I will go into reading the letter that was provided by the applicants. This is dated September 23rd, 2024, from Ken and Lynette Sigbor. And these are comments related to bylaw 1984. After exploring various business models, we determined that the only viable use of 120 Garrison Drive is creating a residential multi-unit complex. Rest assured, this is the only use we are considering, which is why we have applied for zoning change to create rental units. And this will allow for the additional housing in the town for individuals and families. We are mindful of the desire to maintain a quiet and enjoyable neighborhood, and we will also wish to have our building maintained in order to retain its value. We have nice accommodations and should attract responsible tenants and therefore protect our investment. There is a great buffer zone around the property, which with it being adjacent to the park. This should create sufficient separation from Garrison Estate residents. Furthermore, by purchasing the land at the rear of the building, there will be plenty of off-street parking for the basement living spaces, which will limit additional traffic on Garrison Drive. We hope the town will view this rezoning request favorably, given we are responsible property owners and we are taking the steps necessary for our home to be a positive part of the community. So if council has any questions of me now, I'd be willing to answer those.
Does council have any questions regarding the application or the bylaw? I guess, yeah, I don't know if it's a question for now or I can ask it later too. If the rezoning doesn't happen, what happens with that back parking area?
Yeah, so that can be a side issue to this process. I think for now, we wanted to see the SIG boards actually step up and move forward with that, as it has always been the intent of the town to have that sold. Over the many years, many times it has been brought forward and the deal has not gone forward. So we do wish that that was to get finalized. I think there's also, if you look at the map at the north end of it, there is a road proposed. That 001 is sitting on top of that proposed road. That proposed road would help service those condos that sit to the north of it, as well as to get to the backside of this property. So, like I said, it doesn't necessarily have to be part of the deal or be a consideration for this zoning. We did want to see if we couldn't get it through at this point, just the sale. The decision on the zoning is a side issue, and that certainly council can have their say. If it was to fail, then certainly they, given the rules, could come back in 6 months with a different proposal.
There is no further questions from council. Then I'll request a motion to open the public hearing for bylaw 1984. Councillor Fox makes that motion. Call it to question. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion is carried. So we are currently conducting a public hearing for bylaw 1984. We will ask that anyone that wishes to speak in favor would come to the mic, after which we will ask any of those opposed to come to the mic, and we ask that you come to the mic, state your name. If you represent any organization, you can state that as well, and then you'll be able to have up to 5 minutes to present your comments for or against the proposed bylaw that is up for consideration by council. So we'll open up the mic now. Is there anyone wishing to speak for the bylaw? Is there anyone wishing to speak against the bylaw? If you are, yes, please, if you can, come to the mic. If you would be able to state your name, if you're representing anyone else or an organization, and state your position. Welcome.
Good evening, Council, Administration, Gavin Scott, and if development is here. I'm Mary Ann Gender, and I live at 135 Garrison Drive in the neighborhood. So, to be forthright, my presentation to Council tonight was emailed to Ms. Grunberg of Brownlee Friat. The SAGBORs have put forward another proposal with respect to lots 6 and 7, which is the 120 Garrison property, and lot 16, which is the town-owned property to the east of 120 Garrison. There has been presented by the SAGBORs a new rezoning application on the same properties that are now under a notice of decision, a legal order of the Subdivision and Development Appeal Board that was rendered December 7th, 2023. 3 specific conditions were to be met by the SAGBORs on the properties under the order of December 7th, 2023. Item 29 of that order reads, Condition 4, the outstanding conditions identified in the stop order involve the inspections required under the Safety Codes Act. Condition 15, consolidations of the 2 parcels of land on which the building is, that's lots 6 and 7. And condition 14, arrangements regarding provisions of off-site parking. And that's all prior to occupancy. Item 30 of that order reads, the board finds that it's appropriate to grant the appellants an extension of time to comply with the outstanding conditions and requirements of the 2020 development permit. The board considers an additional year from the date of the decision to be a suitable amount of time for the appellants to comply. So the order is dated December 7th, 2023, and the conditions to be met under law must be met by December 7th, 2024. I'm now going to address lot 16 that is immediately situate to the east. There have been 2 expressions of interest put before Mr. Burdette. One by the Weigels on page 3 of their submission, quote, "I asked Anthony Burdette if the residents of Garrison can purchase block 27, and at the time of this letter, he hasn't gotten back to us." And the genders at page 19 and 20 of their submission, in an email from Mr. Burdette to the genders dated 4/5-2024 in reference to lot 16, quote, "This lot specifically is a bit tied up at the moment. The owners of the adjacent building have until January 2025 to sort out a few items. One of them being parking, which is currently accessed through this lot on the back. Given the decision from the Subdivision and Development Appeal Board to permit them 1 year to remedy their outstanding items, the town will be ensuring these items are cleared up before we move forward with anything else on the lot in question." Mr. Burdette continued, quote, "Once the adjacent owner has cleared up their outstanding items, perhaps there will be some options available for this lot. Within the options noted by Mr. Burdette, it would then be necessary under law to consider the following. As lot 16 is public property, it was required by law that notification of a sale to be put forward to the public in a bid process. 2, as lot 16 is a very public issue, as evidenced by a petition with approximately 160 signatures of the citizens of the town, addressing the rezoning of the properties in question, lot 16 be advertised as public offering addressed at least once in the McLeod Gazette. So it's respectfully asked of council and administration that in addition to the 2 items above, the 2 parties that have put forward an expression of interest, could they be advised in writing by town administration of the commencement of the bid process and be provided with an appropriate amount of time to comply with the bid process? To be noted, this offer of sale, and this is as Mr. Scott has says, can only be facilitated upon division of lot 16 because no land can be set for public auction until it's properly and legally recognized as a legal lot as proposed. I understand that the rezoning of lot 16 would have to be addressed and handled by MPC, as I think Mr. Scott mentioned. So are there any questions from council?
Any questions from council regarding the presentation?
Okay. And would it be acceptable to pass a copy of this to Miranda in the
Yes.
event?
Absolutely.
Thank you. And thank you for your time.
You're welcome. Thank you. All right. Thank you very much. Anyone else wishing to speak for or against this application?
Hi, everyone. My name is Kaylee Young, and I'd like to thank you for your time. Are we good? Okay, sorry. So thank you to Mayor, Council, Admin, and all my neighbors for coming out and taking their time to hear what I have to say. I have some pretty big concerns about the rezoning as I am directly across the street. So the buffer that was spoken about in the Sagbor's letter of a park does not help me. I have written a letter where I am concerned about safety, noise, increased traffic, increased garbage. I'm very concerned about the management and maintenance of the building. And as Mr. Scott said in the Sagbor's letter, they wish that they will have their building maintained. Well, if wishes were dreamers, that's not good enough for me. I don't want to know what your wish is. I want to know what you're going to do. In the past with that building, it has fallen on residents of Garrison. We've been put in the position to report deficiencies, to report lack of accountability of what was going on in that building. And I feel that that is an unacceptable position to put residents and neighbors in. I have a big investment in my property, and I want it to be positively impacted and not negatively impacted by some of those discretionary uses. So I'm very worried about that as well. Mr. Scott, in the letter you read from the SAGBORs, did you have it dated September 23rd, 2024? I thought that's what you had said.
That's the date on the newsletter. Yeah, on the letter,
Because the
correct.
letter, in our letter, it said if you would like to address, your letters had to be in by 1 p.m. on the 16th of September, 2024.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
like,
I don't
there's
know.
rules and there's rules, and do we all have to play by them
Yeah.
or do we not? I don't know. But anyways, those are my major considerations. I hope you do take them into account. Thank you for taking my concerns and our position. If this does go ahead and get approved, if the zoning does get approved, do we get an assurance as a community members of upcoming discretionary uses if they, like if it, does it go to a planning committee or something like that? What's the next stage?
Yeah, perhaps, did you want to answer that, Kevin Scott?
Yes, the land use bylaw has two types of discretionary uses. The discretionary A, which is circulated by the development officer and decided upon by the development officer, but there is a circulation process. And then circulation for discretionary B would be going to a decision-making body, the Municipal Planning Commission, which is made up of both lay people and councillors.
Okay, so then do we only get a letter then if it goes to discretionary B?
No, for both.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you for your time.
Thank you. All right, thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak against bylaw 1984?
Good evening. My name is Shannon Weigel, and I live at 119 Garrison. And again, we are very concerned about what is going in this building. We are very much opposed. We are opposed to the zoning and rezoning, spending tens of thousands of dollars, not just by the town of Fort Macleod, but also by the citizens of this beautiful community we call home. Well, everybody but the SAGBORs. They don't live here. They certainly did not do their due diligence the last time this went to a group home. I had many of the counselors in my office, and they were unaware that it was already in commence. There was people living in there. They were already conducting business. After we had our last meeting with the council, it went to the Municipal Planning Commission, is that correct? And I'm not sure, and I don't remember who the woman was that posted it, but there was some illegal activity that happened at that building. And regardless of whether she said she called the RCMP or not, Karen English herself told us, to the community that was there, that somebody had been arrested. 3 of my neighbors witnessed a crossbow being taken out of that facility and put into the back of a cruiser. The RCMP came to my door looking for one of those people that had run away, asking if they could go into my backyard when it was minus 35, looking for a young lady that had run away, that they feared that she was hiding and possibly it froze under my deck. This is why we are so against the zoning and rezoning of this property. I also have a question that I thought, and maybe this was my mistake, but after the last meeting was brought before council, that the lot 27 was to be rezoned for their parking anyway, because it was determined that the driveway where the condos are and where they come into the back of Garrison should have been an alleyway, and it was never. In fact, the or the driveways of those condos that face the south are all on town property. It was my understanding that that bylaw should have already been passed. I don't know why we're here now, again, to ask for it to be rezoned when it was our understanding that from the last time that parcel was supposed to be rezoned. I understand that, and we all understand, that something needs to go into Rosewood Villa. But I'm very concerned that it doesn't end up like the apartment buildings on the east side of WA Day. If you drive by there on any given day, there's bikes strewn all over, there's garbage, cars up on blocks, sometimes for days. It's not kept up, it's not well kept. And those houses on Garrison average $400,000 to $500,000. Our taxes are between $4,000 and $5,000 a year. If it's not done properly, that's going to cost us all, not just the residents of Garrison, but also the town, because you're not going to get the tax base either. So we are very concerned, and I will just, again, thank you. I can't believe that we're doing this again, and we will likely do it again and again and again, but we live here. Ken and Loretta do not. Or Lynette, I'm sorry. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much, Shannon Wiggle. Anyone else wishing to speak against bylaw 1984? Anyone else wishing to speak against bylaw 1984? As was already mentioned, we have had some additional letters that council will be taking into consideration as well. Currently, the recommendation from administration is to close the public hearing and to, let's get the right wording for that. I think postpone or suspend second and third reading until the completion of the subdivision, sale, and consolidation of the lots. Anyone else wishing to speak against bylaw 1984? If not, I will request a motion from council to close the public hearing for bylaw 1984. Councillor Poitras makes that motion. We'll call it the question. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion is carried. So this bylaw will come back to council at a future date for consideration by council, second and third reading. That date, we don't know when it will be. It could be, do we have any best guess?
Yeah, through the Municipal Government Act, you have 2 years to deal with this matter, so I don't know exactly the timeline that the SIGBORs have. We've not received a response on the property purchase itself, so.
As you said, it could be up to 2 years, but it'll be advertised as bylaw 1984 when it comes back to council for consideration. I don't believe there will be any more public advertising of the bylaw coming back to council, correct? Besides what's in our agenda package. All right, well, we'll move on then in our agenda tonight. So we'll move on to consideration of delegation that we had tonight, which was the Empress Theater renovation delegation. And I'll ask our Director of Community Service, we'll ask Anthony to be able to introduce the recommendation again, and we will decide on it from there.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mayor and Council. Just find my papers here. Okay, so the recommendation tonight is that council approves the Empress Theater renovation budget of $240,000 as explained in the delegation, so that it might be placed in the 2025 capital budget, and plans and everything can be underway to get that work done in 2025.
Anyone prepared to make a motion as per the recommendation? Councillor Monteith? Does the motion need to include the potential start date, or that's not really any of our business, right? It's just, okay. Any further discussion from administration or from council towards administration on the timing or any of those questions? It's a big project. It's not going to be a small one.
No, it is a thorough project, and because the town administration with Empress Theatre Society have been investigating it for the past couple of years. And so, having the architects, they had looked into this over a year and a half ago, right? And so a lot of work has gone into this, and so we feel like we have good information to go off of, and we've got the professionals who are willing to work with us, and I think that'll help make it a successful project as well.
I don't know if it's been publicly stated, but the project itself, it's redoing the seating, it's changing some of the elevations, even up on the balcony. The seat count, I think, goes down slightly, correct?
As you'd mentioned, the flooring will be changed slightly to raise the floors that are closest to the stage so that they can actually see the balcony a little bit better. I don't have a problem when I sit up there, but some people might. And in the back, there's also some raised. In the diagram, you can see they actually draw sight lines for those positions, and on our balcony as well, changing that so that the sight lines would be improved for an improved experience when watching live shows or movies as well. And then the seats themselves, and there was a lot of talk initially, like it got pretty large in potential scope, where there was a lot of things added. But this quote here is just for reupholster, recushion, and then spacing out the seats a little bit more comfortably so that we aren't touching our knees on the seats in front of us. But that's about the extent of the work. And the rest of the seat pieces will be refinished as well. So.
And structurally, the building is not impacted, right? I know there was a time where they might have to take the the current flooring out, but that's not happening.
No, it's been very clear with the professionals, the historic, why his name slipping my mind right now, Fraser Shaw, that actually it would be priority to keep the original floor intact. So we would just cover it. So it would be preserved underneath the new floor because it is a historical, resource there. And any structural pieces, like there are, with an old building, there's many structural things we could do. One thing that's not listed in this quote that we will continue to look into as we are, because if we're going to close for renovations, we're going to investigate there was some discussion previously about improving the structural integrity of the balcony. And so if we're going to close for 6 months, we want to make sure we have all of that. We just didn't have a quote for that information. But something like that would generally have a lot of potential funding because it's preserving the historical life of that asset. And so we're hopeful that when we do get more on that, we can cover most of it with grants.
Good. Any other comments, questions? Be an exciting project, well needed. Yeah. So if there's no further discussion or questions, motion is on the floor. There is no debate. We'll call it the question. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you very much. Moving on then to new business, we have bylaw 1989, which is a land use bylaw amendment from commercial general to residential, and we'll ask our planner Gavin Scott to introduce this to us.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. To council and the mayor, public, what we have this evening is bylaw 1989 for your consideration to redesignate lands legally described as Lot 12, Block 423, Plan 92B, from commercial general to residential. And their public hearing is scheduled for October 15th at 7 p.m. And so a recommendation is to give first reading this evening.
Very good. Anyone prepared to make a motion as per the recommendation? Councillor Patel makes the motion. Any further questions or discussion? I think the question I had is that the properties adjacent, I'm trying to remember what their zoning was. Up to the corner on, what is it, 4th Avenue? I only asked that because I was curious. I know when we talked about our land use map, we were thinking it would be good, some of the highway stuff, to have a bit of a buffer between commercial and residential. So I was curious if multifamily zoning would be of even an option, just as a bit of a buffer, but I don't know. I just thought I'd ask the question to see if there's any appetite by the applicant to adjust that.
I don't think the question was asked. I understand your point, because we did do a residence similar to this, to that zoning, so we can reach out and find out.
Yeah, because the land's adjacent, I think lot number 10, I believe, is I can't remember if we rezoned some of those, but it would be good to review that, I think. Any other thoughts, questions from council? If there is not, we'll call the motion to question. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion is carried. Moving on to item number 2, bylaw 1996, which is an ICF revision, and our CAO, Anthony Burdett, would like to speak to this one.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Before you have bylaw 1996, which is an ICF revision. The recommendation is that this bylaw be given all 3 readings tonight. The original intermunicipal collaboration framework was passed in March 2020, and there was a condition there that it had to be reviewed, that Schedules C, D, and E needed to be reviewed at the 5-year mark, or before the 5-year mark, sorry. And so this year was luckily for us, the town of Fort Macleod was the host of all of these meetings, and so less travel time for us. But to identify what these schedules were in the intermunicipal collaboration framework, Schedule C is the services listed provided by the municipality directly. And so all of us municipalities, which would be the town of Fort Macleod, the town of Claresholm, the town of Nanton, the MD of Willow Creek, and is it village or town of Staveley? Town of Staveley. My apologies, Staveley. I knew it was Staveley, but, and so we've all listed the services that we provide directly, and they're there for reference. And then Schedule D is services provided intermunicipally. And then Schedule E is services provided by a third party. And so the practice here, the CAO, we met as an ICF committee and discussed the needed for the update. And then there was a subsequent meeting where the CAOs met. We went over the list, which was actually a very valuable process because we were able to see which services were provided in each of those categories, and it made for good conversation and good perspective to see which municipalities were sharing services and what other municipalities were doing for third-party services. So it was, I would say, a valuable practice. We updated the lists so that they were current, and then that was passed. It was a recommendation by the ICF committee, and a bylaw was drafted by our friends at the MD of Willow Creek for us to pass here at the town of Fort Macleod, accepting the changes that have been put forward in Schedules C, D, and E for the ICF revision. Any questions or comments? I'm here to answer them.
Very good. All right, anyone prepared to make a motion for first reading of bylaw 1996? Councillor Wolstenholme makes the motion for first reading of bylaw 1996. Does anyone have any questions on bylaw 1996 and the schedules that will be replaced? Really, it's a lot of data and information, not a lot of action or what have you. So if there's no further discussion or questions, we'll call the motion to question. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion is carried. I will request a motion for second reading of bylaw 1996. Councillor Fox makes that motion. Anyone have any further questions? If not, we'll call it the question. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion is carried. I request a motion from council to be able to proceed to third reading. Anyone prepared to make that motion? Councillor Henniger makes the motion. I will need unanimous approval to proceed for third reading, so I'll call it the question. All in favor? Unanimously carried. And I'll request a motion for third reading of bylaw 1996. Councillor Poitras makes the motion. And if there's no discussion or debate, we'll call it the question. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you very much. Moving on to Intermunicipal Development Plan Committee recommendation. And I'll ask our CEO Burdette to speak to this one as well.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. So before you have the Intermunicipal Development Plan Committee recommendation regarding the Jumbo Solar project. The recommendation this evening is that Council accept the attached correspondence to Neon Energy regarding the Jumbo Solar and Storage project as information, and further approves the recommendation of the Town of Fort Macleod and Municipal District Willow Creek, number 26, Intermunicipal Development Plan Committee to seek legal and technical representation pertaining to intervene in the Alberta Utilities Commission proceeding 29317 for the purpose of demonstrating our concern regarding the proposed Jumbo Solar and Storage project developed by Neon Renewables Canada Incorporated. So the letter was approved by the IDP and was previously shared with Neon. So just a adoption and acceptance of that letter, and then that support for us to seek legal and technical representation to present to the AUC.
Okay. We can split this up to two motions if council wishes as well. If there's any discussion, any interest in that. Is anyone prepared to make a motion as per the recommendation? No. Recommendation is to accept the letter as presented and to work with the MD Willow Creek for intervenor status in the proceedings of the application. Councillor Wilson makes the motion. You want them both included? Yeah. So to accept as information and to work with the MD Willow Creek. Any discussion on the motion? So I think the letter is pretty clear on the position of both the MD and the Town of Fort Macleod. It's not in any way that we as a council are against solar. The concerns that we had is proximity to the main corridor into the Town of Fort Macleod, being in our joint ICF agreements with the MD Willow Creek, and a lack of clarity on how the site would be properly maintained with the grass and so on around the solar field, being it's a large project upwind from the Town of Fort Macleod. Any other comments, questions, debate? If there is no further comments, then I will call it the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion is carried. All right. Thank you, Gavin. Have a good night. We will request a motion to go in camera for the 1 legal and 3 land sale items. Councillor Fox makes the motion. All in favor? Motion is carried. Thank you very much.